Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2023 gubernatorial elections or as of today, they stand. So before we get into it, I want to make a couple of things clear. First of all, it's January, so we still have 10 months to go to these elections, and if you remember my predictions from January of 2022, they look very different from both my final prediction and the actual results. So take this video with a grain of salt, although I do think it's going to be an important introduction for these races. So let's start by just broadly looking at where these states stand. So as you can see right now, Democrats hold 2 of these 3 states' governorships, despite the fact that none of these states actually voted for Joe Biden. And that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, Kentucky has had a long history of electing Democratic governors dating back to hundreds of years ago. Louisiana has been more back and forth. 1800s, very blue state, 1900s and late 1900s specifically became redder. But Democrats have managed to be competitive at the statewide level on some occasions. And in 2019, which was when this election was last held, they won in a runoff, obviously. John Bel Edwards, the Democrat, who, ran as a very moderate campaign, very, issue focused, distanced himself from the National Party. He won by 40,000 votes against Eddie Rispone, who was the Republican nominee or the Republican who advanced to the runoff. And John Bel Edwards has been the governor of Louisiana for 8 years. He won first in 2015, and he was able to win in 2019 as well. So he is term limited, and that is a problem for Democrats because without John Bel Edwards, they're kind of stuck, up a creek without a paddle. And what I mean by that is they don't really have a candidate. They have some people who might run, like Gary Chambers specifically, who is a more progressive, candidate for Senate last time, and he, didn't really do that well. But really, this race, in all likelihood, will not be competitive. Now, there is a chance that it could be closer than expected. Louisiana locally can be quite wacky. A lot of Republicans or a lot of people who voted for Trump are open to voting for Democrats on lower levels. But again, without John Bel Edwards, it would not, to me at least, would not really be a competitive race. And again, I understand that may sound oversimplified, but remember, in 2015, when John Bel Edwards first won, a lot of things were different, both nationally and within Louisiana, and Democrats have fallen a lot in the state since he first won. So Louisiana right now, I think if we're characterizing these states, I'll put it as safe Republican, for the time being, and it would take a lot for me to move that down from safe Republican. I think Republicans are going to pick it up by at least 15 to 20 points. Now, Mississippi, on the other hand, is not a safe Republican, even though I do think the Republicans have the edge here. So starting in 2019, let's talk about Mississippi. So if we can go back to 2019, if that is allowed, Tate Reeves, who's the incumbent Republican governor, won by about 5%. And, he did a fairly, decent, I don't want to say job because it's not my job to analyze how he's done as governor, but his approvals were all right for most of his term. But for the last year, he's been really struggling, especially with the Jackson water crisis and with, his handling of COVID in the beginning. And he's just overall not really had an easy time governing. You can, say he's a good governor with bad circumstances or a bad governor who just isn't good, right? Whatever. Point is, his approvals are not good. And, Democrats in 2019, before the fact that he became unpopular, were, decently close to unseating him. Or beating him, rather. He was not the incumbent, but beating him. And, they have some hope this time. So 2023, obviously Reeves running for re-election, although he does have a few primary challenges, which could damage him, although I do think he'd still win a primary. But here's what Republicans are worried about. Brendan Presley, who is the Democrat from the Mississippi Public Service Commission. And Presley represents the northern part of the state. So if we look at the 2019 election, he represents kind of this part of the state. And this part of the state did vote for Trump fairly decisively in 2020. It was a bit close to the 2019 governor's race. But the point is, Presley has one district that voted for Trump before. Now, can that translate to a statewide election? We don't know. Public service commissions, as you might expect, are taken just a lot less seriously than a presidential, Senate, or governor's race. And in addition to that, a lot of Republicans and Democrats, but in Mississippi, Republicans are open to voting for Democrats down ballot, but will not vote for them. in, polarized statewide races. And that really is Presley's problem, right? Like, he can have some crossover appeal in his local district and, can do well in smaller races, but can he win a governor's race even against someone as unpopular as Tate Reeves? I don't think so. I think Republicans are going to win it by less than Trump won the state by, but certainly a lot of things hurt Democrats, and off your, Mississippi is a red state, and it always will be in the era of politics we live in, right? But Democrats struggle to win Mississippi without really high black turnout, and in off-year elections, that is just not usually likely. So things could change. I think there's room for Presley to make it a race here, but for now, I still think he's on track to lose, even if he is a good candidate. Now, Kentucky is the competitive race of the year, right? This race is going to be really interesting. I think it's going to be down to the wire. But right now, it's looking pretty good for Andy Beshear, who is the incumbent Democrat. So Beshear is a more moderate Democrat. He's still, I wouldn't call him he's not Manchin. He's not a conservative. He's not, I think, what some people might call a dino. But he is a moderate. He has, often distanced himself from the National Party. And he doesn't talk a lot about the bigger issues that Democrats nationally like to talk about. Now, I know that he has done, a lot of socially liberal policies, especially with regards to transgender rights, which, again, makes him more of just a generic Democrat, but he has not taken those stances as firmly or as publicly as other Democrats nationally have. And I think that's, for a couple of reasons, most importantly of which being that he's in Kentucky, which is a redder state. And so that's why I think he's good at politics, and he's just generally going to be receiving, pretty united support for Democrats as well as some Republican crossover support. And so right now that seems to be materializing. He's up by 9 over his likely opponent, Dan Cameron, who is the Attorney General. And Cameron, I think let's talk about him because he's a pretty good candidate in his own right as well. So Cameron in 2019 on the same ballot as Beshear winning. If you look, Beshear narrowly beat out incumbent Republican Governor Matt Bevin by just over 5,000 votes. Daniel Cameron won by 15. So he outran the top of the ticket by, nearly 16% here. And again, he did quite well. And so I think when you look at how he performed in 2019 on the same ballot as, Bevin losing the governorship, pretty impressive stuff. Now, that being said, I think Beshear is certainly the stronger candidate because, again, he's the incumbent and he has, fairly popular or fairly good numbers. He, again, approval rating is actually rising. Now it's at 61%, and he has a lead over Cameron with the first poll of the cycle. And again, we learned in November that, red states are open to electing Democratic governors, like Kansas with Laura Kelly. And so I think right now Beshear is favored. I'd rather be him in this race. But again, it's going to be close. And I think, as we get more polarized and as this race continues to narrow, with Cameron maybe starting to attack Beshear or, tie him to Biden and whatnot and polarize the state more, it will narrow up. And I think there could be, we could easily get to a point in November where I have Dan Cameron as the favorite. Now, I still feel pretty good about my Beshear rating. I think he's favored. I think, Kentucky passed the pro-choice side of referendum by about 5.5% in November. And so I think without Republican turnout, Democrats might have their own turnout problems in Louisville, but without Republican turnout being great in the rural areas, I think Beshear is, not comfortable, but I think he's in a pretty good spot right now. So, again, going to be close, but lean Democratic for now. So those are my ratings as of January 2023. We still have 10 months to go before these elections, so please do, refrain from making any bold statements or bold criticisms, but I think right now this is where we stand. Again, if you enjoyed this video, go follow me on Instagram over at RyanJakubowski_3. Go follow my Twitter at RyanJakubowski. Go read my newsletter or Substack, whatever you want to call it, at ryanjakubowski.substack.com. And if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and I'll see you all in the next one.